Great, so we will get started. Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Diana Colin and I am with the California Community Foundation. If you just joined us, we're asking for everyone to introduce themselves on the chat with your name, your pronouns, and the organization you represent. This training today will be recorded and available to everyone after the training is done. Today's training is on the nuts and bolts of a grassroots advocacy campaign. And this is part of a series of civic engagement trainings. We did 8 last year leading up to each election, and this is the second training this year. Our hopes are that through these trainings, we are creating a space for peer learning and resources sharing. We will get started today, and I hope we can do this. I'm going to stop share with some poll questions. So let me launch the poll and hope for 100% participation. First question, do you all see it on your end? Thumbs up? Yeah. What type of organization do you represent? And the second question is, what best describes your role within your organization? We'll give it a couple minutes. I think we have 61% participation. We're almost there. Setting a good example of what we need turnout to be during elections. We're at 83%. Once we get to 90, I think we can share the results. It's good, we're at 90%. So who do we have in the room? And this is really just to help us understand where folks are coming from, and to plan future trainings too. 77% of you come from an organizing or power building community-based organization. 10% come from a service provider organization, 3% from government, and 10% other. What best describes your role within your organization? 31% are field staff, 3% are finance staff, 10% are development staff, 5% are volunteers, and 26% are policy staff. Another 26% share other. So I realized I didn't. There you all go. Check it out. Great. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today. We have a very exciting panel discussions and presentations. The way we're doing it today is TED Talk style, where 3 community-based organizations, a lot of our friends and partners, are really talking to us about what's the secret sauce for their grassroots advocacy campaign. And again, the chat is open. Please use it to comment or make questions. We will let all 3 speakers present, and then we will come back once they're all done and open it up for a conversation. So I will stop now and I will hand it over to Cielo Castro, the Vice President of Public Policy and Civic Engagement at California Community Foundation, for welcome remarks. Cielo.
Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. As Diana mentioned, I'm Cielo Castro. I'm the new Vice President of Public Policy and Civic Engagement here at the California Community Foundation. I'm really excited to welcome all of you to what I think is a really exciting series of TED Talk style presentations, as Diana just mentioned, that are really focused on how to build a grassroots advocacy campaign. We have 3 awesome presenters who will guide us on how to build successful campaigns to achieve systems change, from pathways and pipelines to power building through coalitions, all while focused on staying active in non-election years. I'd also like to thank our partners in this effort. That's the California Wellness Foundation, the Liberty Hill Foundation, the United Way, and of course the Weingart Foundation. So thank you again for being in community with us as part of our civic engagement training series. And I will turn it over to Diana Colleen, who will facilitate the afternoon's presentations. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Cielo. Okay, we will get started. The first presenter we have, a friend to many of us, Rudy Espinosa with Inclusive Action for the City. So Rudy, I will hand it over to you.
Hey, everybody, it's great to be here. And I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing a lot of friendly friends and organizations here that are doing great work. I was invited here to share some information about coalitions. And so what I'm going to do right now is share my screen. And Diana, I have about 10 minutes, correct, before we go to Q&A?
Yep, 15.
15, awesome. Okay, great, team. I promise not to be boring. I'll try not to be boring at least. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm not able to respond directly in the chat, but I'll try to get them verbally as we go through this. Let me share my screen. You should see my screen in my presentation. I'm going to click present. Let's see here. All right, team, can you see that? Can I get a thumbs up from somebody?
We're good.
Okay, awesome, dope. All right, team. What I want to talk about today is about coalitions. And I see a lot of people on the chat, the people that are here today are really knowledgeable about coalitions. So what I want to do is share a little bit about our experience with coalitions. And I want to tell you in the next 15 minutes why Inclusive Action thinks they're so important. And I think part of the DNA of the organization and Inclusive Action is we work together, given our name. We think we are much more powerful when we're joining forces. So today, in the next 10, 12 minutes, what I want to do is I want to introduce you to Inclusive Action if you don't know who we are. I want to take a little time to define coalitions and why they win. And then I want to spend the majority of the time sharing some key principles and tips for success. And then we'll end with some final thoughts. And again, if you guys have any questions, we'll try to cover them together in the next 15 minutes. So team, this is actually a portion of my team at Inclusive Action. We are an economic justice organization that's based in Boyle Heights, but serves LA County. We really care about addressing poverty and addressing the systems that are creating poverty in our communities. And we're also really interested in making sure folks have resources in their hands today. We are seeing, these are some of the challenges that we're seeing in our communities. We're seeing that a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs, these are folks that can't find a job and are creating their own businesses. They're struggling to get capital. We all know it takes money to make money and they're having a hard time getting it. We're seeing a severe racial wealth gap in our communities, not only in Los Angeles, but throughout the country. And we're also seeing some inequities in who has land and who has access to assets. We're seeing a lot of our communities really vulnerable to market speculation and gentrification. And so Inclusive Action is trying to figure out how we can help our communities. And we're trying to address these challenges in 3 ways, friends. The first is we're trying to get capital to people. Inclusive Action is a certified community development financial institution. And what that means is that we are a lender. We provide low interest loans and business coaching to entrepreneurs, like the entrepreneur that's pictured right there on the left. That's really important to us. And so we have clients that we support with capital and with technical assistance. And that's a big piece of the work that Inclusive Action does. But we're a little bit different than other lenders because we also see the importance of political power. So the second thing that we do is we focus on research and advocacy, and that's the bulk of the presentation today, is we really focus on working together with other people to advocate for systems change. It's not enough to get somebody a grant or a microloan. We need to really think about the systems that are causing people to experience poverty. And so this middle piece here is really critical. And then the last piece here that I'll share with you is we have a division that we're growing called Community Innovation that's looking at experiments to get our communities to a better place. And that includes real estate, that includes building power in our communities and organizing and engaging them. And that includes other alternative financing mechanisms to get resources into the hands of people. So these are the 3 things that Inclusive Action does. I serve as the executive director. I love my job and I love the people that I get to work with every day, and I love the people that we serve. So, team, we believe in coalitions, okay? And so when Diana and the CCF team asked me to participate today, and I was having on the prep call with Alexandra, I was like, what is really a coalition? And so I looked it up in the dictionary, And it has a pretty good definition. A coalition is a temporary alliance of distinct parties, persons, states for joint action. Okay, and sorry, it looks like I'm missing one of the little logos there, but I underlined the key pieces of the definition. A coalition oftentimes is temporary. There's a distinct people that come together, but they're coming together for something that they have a common agreement around, a joint action. Okay, and so I thought that it's important for us because I think sometimes we may think that a coalition lasts forever, or we think, you know what, I can't work with that person for a long time, so I don't want them to be part of our coalition. A coalition is a temporary convening of people to get some work done. Okay, and so I think it's a really important framing for the work as we begin to plan out the systems changes that we want. Sometimes we want to probably join forces with somebody temporarily because it's probably going to help us reach our goal quicker. I hope that makes sense for everybody. Awesome. Okay, so let's see here. So, you know, inclusive action through our policy work has been part of a lot of coalitions. I wanted to kind of like set the stage here. We are one of the co-founders of the LA Street Vendor Campaign. We worked with Alexandra and her team and many others, including some people on this Zoom in the Healthy LA Coalition during the pandemic. We're currently one of the principles of Immigrants Are LA, which is a county-wide coalition that's focused on advocating for resources for immigrant communities. And we're also part of this smaller but emerging coalition called the Small Business Alliance for Equitable Communities. That's a convening of practitioners that are focused on supporting BIPOC micro entrepreneurs in our neighborhoods. And so I think we're part of several other coalitions, but these are some of the key ones that come to mind. And I wanted to share this because these are all, to some extent, temporary alliances of distinct people, but there's a joint action across each one. There's a specific charge that each coalition has. Okay. So team, let me tell you what we have learned to date. And so inclusive action has been around for 14, 15 years, and we've learned a lot. Okay. So what I want to share with you is that the best coalitions are safe spaces. Okay, the most effective coalitions are ones where the members of the coalition really care about each other, that you can see that they're investing in relationships. You see that they're discussing, that they understand the work styles of each person within the coalition, but they're not only spending time doing the work together, they're also spending time with each other offline. And I wanted to kind of add that extra layer because the best coalitions, they're really authentic friendships, if you will. Okay, they spend a lot of time thinking about how to make decisions together. They create space for disagreements, which I think is a really important thing of the best coalitions. That they're not just agreeing with each other. They're not just yes people. They're really pushing each other and having discussions about tactics. And that really means that they are leaning into good communication. Okay, and this is a photo of almost a decade ago of a coalition meeting with the LA Street Vendor Campaign. And so there's some of the members there discussing. We were actually preparing for a meeting with Mayor Garcetti at that time, and vendors were going to be there, and we were discussing how we were going to approach that meeting. And so this is a photo from that time. Friends, coalitions should also elevate the unique strengths of members. I think that the best coalitions are those that bring in different folks. Think about it like the Avengers. Like everyone has their superpower. They're coming together for that joint action. This photo is a photo of the steering committee of the LA Street Vendor Campaign. This was in 2018. This was right after the city council voted to legalize street vending. And you see the faces here. Every person here had a very specific role. And the coalition created a space for everybody to really flex that. Okay. And so as you think about your coalition work, you want to make sure that you're bringing people together that have a unique strength, and that person knows that they can flex that strength, right? And so I found that in my experience that that's just really, really important. The third thing that I want to share with you is that effective coalitions really try to minimize the ego. Friends. I know that all the folks here that are listening work in advocacy work in some way. You're probably running up against maybe an elected official that just cares about their face on a billboard, or maybe you're working with a partner that's kind of power hungry. The best coalitions really care about the group, and they're sort of trying to diminish their own agenda, right? Again, they're focused on the joint action. And so the best coalitions are really focused on creating spaces where not only you could disagree and make clear decisions, but you're sharing support, you're sharing opportunities. This is a photo of a press conference with the LA Street Vendor Campaign. That's Miss Debbie, who's a vendor on Crenshaw. We were really clear about, hey, we want to make sure that everybody has a voice here. And especially when the press comes calling and there's opportunities to be highlighted, we want to make sure that everybody has a chance. And that was something that was a unique value, a common value that we had in the coalition. I think that made this particular coalition really effective. I also want to note to you all that when you have the value inside of you that it's not me, it's about us, it's also an opportunity for you to raise money together. And I think that every coalition needs resources. We need to invest in the coalition work. And that means that you have to kind of shed our perceptions around money and think about and really work together and say, hey, these are the resources that we need. Let's work together and let's use our networks together to raise money. The most effective coalitions do this really well. They're not afraid to talk about what they need, and they're not afraid to share their resources in their networks to get resources for the joint action. Okay. The last point that I want to share with you about coalitions, folks, is that coalitions require a lot of work. And we have some funders that are convening us today. I think that all of us that are doing advocacy work in our coalitions have a role to play in educating our funders about why they should invest in coalitions. They should invest in coalitions because they work, but they also allow us to maximize our impact. Our organization is relatively small, and so we can't do all this by ourselves. We can't legalize street vending. We can't advocate for rent control for small businesses. We can't do all these things by ourselves. But if we join forces with other people that have unique superpowers, we can do a lot of great work together. And so what I want to share with you all is that a coalition and maintaining a coalition is work, and sometimes it's a little bit taxing. But if you look at the long run, usually a coalition is really able to maximize your limited capacity to do more. There's no way that we would have been able to, for example, legalize street vending, which is what this sign is about, the 50,000 street vendors in Los Angeles. We wouldn't have been able to legalize street vending without our partners at Community Power Collective, at Public Council, at Chila. There's no way we could have done it because we just didn't have the resources to do it alone. My time is ending, but I wanted to kind of just give you guys a recap about what coalitions should be and why you should really prioritize them. They should be safe spaces to build. They should be spaces for different expertise and superpowers. They can spur new opportunities, especially if folks are kind of shedding their ego and working together. And the coalitions do require work, but they can, in the long run, really maximize the impact that you can have if you were working alone. These are some of the wins. As I was preparing for today's quick talk, I was like, what did we accomplish? Sometimes you're so deep in the work and you forget the things that you did, but we've done a lot of stuff together with various coalitions. I've shared a lot about legalizing street vending. We've passed 2 state bills with the LA Street Vendor Campaign. We just passed a big bill last year, Senate Bill 972, that creates a pathway for street food vending. We've done that with a family of friends, of organizations that I mentioned that have been working together and have really invested in the relationships. And we've been really effective. We've secured $50 million for micro businesses in California together. We separately raised $2.5 million during the pandemic. This was just mutual aid work that we were raising ourselves to get cash to street vendors. We've done a lot of work for immigrants with the Immigrants Are LA campaign, sorry for the typo there. And we've also done a lot of work around affordable housing and introducing new finance mechanisms in the county. And that we did that work with advocates, but also developers and other practitioners that don't see themselves as advocates, but again, had unique superpowers to bring to the table, okay? So that's the end of my talk, team. I put this little QR code. If you want to find me and have questions, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty accessible if you have any questions, especially for the folks on the chat here. Pacoma Beautiful, I think shout out to the Valley and various other organizations that are here. We admire you and want to figure out ways to work together. So thanks again to CCF for inviting me.
Thank you, Rudy. Welcome to those that joined a little late. We will move on to our second TED Talk presentation today from the Koreatown Immigrant Worker Center, Alexandra Su.
Hey there, everyone. Great to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about Kiwa. I'm the executive director of Kiwa, and then get into a specific policy advocacy campaign that we're running right now. And then talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts, and we'll see how far we get. So I will also try to follow Rudy's lead and not go over time. So I'm watching the clock carefully. I'm going to share my screen. So starting with, how do you, okay. Oh wait, I didn't share. I just 1 second. I don't know if I see the way to share it now. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry. Okay, and now that we are here, move this over. This is not my strong suit, obviously. Oh no. Okay, well, as I'm starting to figure this out, I will tell you that Kiwa is a worker center. We have been in existence for 30 years. Okay, here we go. And our main focus, the heart of our mission, is organizing to build power. And the reason why we see that as so vital is that when workers or renters or vendors or community members come together and to analyze a situation, collectively figure out a solution, and work to bring that solution about, there's a struggle, and it's challenging, it's difficult. And the transformation that the community member or workers and that staff and organizations and coalitions go through as they engage in this struggle is life-changing. And that is what builds our muscle, it builds our ability to then move on to more, to advance our movement beyond that one campaign. And I start by saying that because organizing can be part of a grassroots advocacy campaign, and we see the need for grassroots advocacy campaigns policy change as well as organizing. And I'm just showing you a few photos of some of our work. Just to say that we do worker leadership development, workers do political education, and there are moments when we're in the streets as well. We also do activities. In fact, right now, if you look at the one on the right, there's an actual action going on right this moment, 1 o'clock today. Workers at COE are advocating for their union. So that is going on. But today I'm going to talk about an advocacy campaign. Kiwa is co-president of the California Coalition for Worker Power, and we have a bill that is in the legislature right now called SB 497, and it helps protect California workers against retaliation when they speak up about their working conditions. So I'm going to stop sharing now and talk a little bit about that campaign. So the California Coalition for Worker Power was founded because workers, I'm sorry, because I'm still struggling with this tech. The California Coalition for Worker Power focuses on policies that actually support organizing and support the building of power. So we don't address all issues that improve conditions for workers, but we focus on those activities that can support worker organizations and workers to build power in their communities. Now, why do we do advocacy? So I already explained why we do organizing. And I think we all know that services are also vital. They address vital needs that our communities have. But what advocacy helps us to do is to set standards at scale. And they allow us to raise standards, and to the degree that our community members, workers, renters, vendors, street vendors, immigrants, and so on, are involved in the policy process, it stands to reason that our policies, our social standards, will be more democratic. And so it is vital that we engage in policy advocacy. We cannot, we won't be able to win if we have to go only workplace by workplace or building by building or case by case. The problems that we face are so vast in this society that a one by one workplace or one by one apartment building approach will never get us to the solution that we need. At the same time, we cannot dispense with organizing, because organizing is how we build the capacity to even make policy changes. So it all fits together very closely. Now, the SB 497 campaign is, for all the reasons that Rudy outlined, it is a policy campaign, and we work together with many organizations. And what I'm going to do for the next few minutes is talk about some of those actual nuts and bolts. So when we started to think about what type of policies we needed, we actually said, we need just cause. We need to ensure that workers, because the biggest barrier to organizing is retaliation, or the fear of retaliation. In other words, workers know that they're not getting a fair shake. Workers know that we're not earning enough. Workers know that when an employer is making them work off the clock, or not paying overtime, or sometimes not even paying minimum wage, it's not that workers don't understand that exploitation is happening. And in fact, some of our research shows that in low wage industries, 80% of workers experience some type of violation every single pay period. So it is an endemic pandemic problem, worker exploitation. And if that's the case, why aren't more workers speaking up? We, of course, hear in the media about certain times when they do, but why aren't more workers speaking out if the exploitation is at the level that we know it to be? The answer is obviously the fear of retaliation. Workers are sometimes one paycheck away from not being able to pay their rent, one paycheck away from not being able to put food on the table, and so on, and take care of their families. And that fear of retaliation is real. So knowing that, from talking to many, many, many workers and running campaigns, we said, what can we do to prevent retaliation? And the answer we came to is a long-term goal, which is just cause, that in order to terminate a worker or take an adverse action, there has to be a good reason. You can't just do it for no reason. And but we know that it's not possible to get there this year, that if we tried to run a campaign on just cause termination, we would not win. So we had to design a multi-year campaign, and SB 497 is just the first step in that campaign. So I guess one takeaway from that would be, think about what our long-term goals are, what we would need to do to really see a change in the lives of our community members, and say, well, maybe we can't do that right now, but what is a stepping stone, or what is a first step we can take that will move us closer to getting to that goal? And that's what SB 497 represents. It's not going to make all the changes, and it's not going to create all the conditions that we need, but it takes us one step forward. And I could spend some time going into the details of what SB 497 does, but I'm going to actually skip that, because that's not relevant really to the topic at hand, which is the nuts and bolts of a grassroots advocacy campaign. Just just trust me that it is one small step in providing workers protection from retaliation. So I'm going to now just talk about some of the elements. One thing that was really important to us was including worker perspectives and voices from the very beginning. So we did a lot of anecdotal and organizer conversations, discussions with workers. We also conducted formal focus groups and surveys. And so we had a very clear idea of the extent and the ways in which retaliation showed up in the lives of workers around the state and in different industries and different racial and ethnic communities. We then you got workers together on Zooms. It was still during the pandemic, and they actually named our campaign. They chose the name, the workers chose the name, our voices, our jobs, our voice. Our voice, our jobs. And it's not personally what I would have chosen, but it is the choice that the workers made, and we are going with that name. And it's a multi-year campaign that we are running. So worker involvement, not just at the focus group level, but also we have put together a committee of worker leaders who understand that this is a multi-year fight and they're interested in seeing it through. And that means they are in fact already involved in campaign discussions, in lobbying and advocacy, in media, in participating in the communications. And that piece is very important. And that's what I understood when I saw the title Grassroots Advocacy Campaigns, because you could try to run an advocacy campaign without a grassroots component, but it's much harder. And it's also not going to be as good of a campaign if the community that is most impacted by that policy is not involved. So that is very vital. Another factor is that with all of the research that we did, one of the partners in our coalition, NELP, produced a report. And that report detailed a lot of the issues that we had seen. And we were able to point to that as when we were in conversation. So having a report that you can draw upon to have conversations with legislators or with media or with allies is very helpful. Another piece of the nuts and bolts is, so that's research. Another piece of it is communications. And this is why I was struggling before. I'm trying to find trying to share my screen to show some of the images of our policy campaign. And now I have it. So let's try to do it once more. Okay. Here we are. So now this is on one of our trips to Sacramento. This on the left is compañera from another organization. The two people in the middle are member leaders at KIWA, and the person on the right is a staff member at KIWA. So we are an organizer, not a policy advocate, and we all were part of a larger delegation to talk to legislators about the campaign. I hope, okay. This is, and I didn't realize that there were going to be so many policy advocates on the call. You already know this, but a lot of the advocacy process is just sitting down with staff and legislators and talking to them, explaining not only our personal stories, but also our analysis and why we're here and to ask for these changes. Sometimes when you think you're going to go into a policymaker's office, they say, no, you just have to come over here to the side of the hallway and we can just talk for 10 minutes, go ahead. And then you just have to shift gears very quickly. That often happens. And you have to be prepared for a lot of last minute changes when you're doing this kind of advocacy. This is a selfie that an assembly member took, and I bring it up because this is a person who is the chair of one of the committees that we need to pass through, and we had tried to reach out to her in numerous ways, sent an email, somebody else sent an email, somebody tried to call her, this and that, and we didn't know if she was hearing us at all. We didn't know if she was trying not to respond or what, but by being in the same place that she was, we realized, oh, she's actually not trying to avoid us. In fact, she talked about our issue, talked about our bill, and then she herself offered to do this selfie. And I'm just bringing up this one example to say, actually going and meeting with elected officials and attempting to build relationships is one part of it. And some folks, you'll already have a relationship. Other times you have to actively build that relationship. This is a photo of one of our members who is speaking to the media, and that's another piece of the nuts and bolts that we have to do media campaigns at the same time to try to raise our issues in the media, and it also becomes a worker leadership development opportunity. This is a restaurant worker who had never been to Sacramento, let alone spoken to Univision, but now she has had that experience as part of this advocacy campaign. And then this is just a picture of one of the groups that went up in April. Okay, so those are just the photos I wanted to share, and I see that I am 1 minute over time, so I'm going to stop. There's a lot more in terms of the nuts and bolts, but the one I would emphasize is what I started with, that involving workers at every step of the way, not just at the mobilization phase. And you can substitute workers with whatever community members you're working with, is very, very important, and will make our movements and our campaigns stronger. I can say a lot more, but I will stop there.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Again, feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask questions. I know there's some questions and we can answer them during the live after all the presenters have gone. But now I will hand it over to DeAndrea Lodier-Ross from LA Black Workers Center.
Good afternoon. My name is DeAndrea Lodier-Ross. My pronouns are they and them, and I'm the Director of Leadership Development with the Los Angeles Black Workers Center. I'm going to pull up my presentation. Okay. Oh, I'm not. Okay. All right, and so I'm really excited to talk to you all about and introduce to some of you the Los Angeles Black Workers Center. We are based in South Central LA. Our mission is to increase access to quality careers and reduce employment discrimination for Black workers in LA, but really across LA County. We want Black workers to be able to survive and thrive. They can, sustain their families. They can build towards futures. And so a lot of our policy programming, organizing work centers around working with other community partners, unions, and employers to think creatively about making industries more hospitable to Black workers. And we are a member-led organization, which means all of the policy, all of the committee work, really all of the dreaming and visioning starts with community, starts with members, and informs the work that we move throughout the year. It informs, what we're presenting to community around, like, here are our priorities and what we want to bring to our city council representative. It members inform the exact policies that are drafted and campaigns that are moved. And so over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk more about who the Black Worker Center is, but also introduce you to the strategies that work when you're moving policy and centering not just community and their needs, but their voices, their creativity, and letting and encouraging and creating space for community, for your membership to lead the work. And so I'm going to start off with our 1,000 Strong campaign. The purpose of the 1,000 Strong campaign is to create intentional pipelines with several partners across California to build towards 1,000 Black workers placed at the city, state, and county level. We have currently started off by partnering with the city of LA and several unions to think about what are new pathways or new connections we can make so that Black workers can have access to those pathways, but also be retained in those spaces, and crafting programs or workforce development programs that don't just focus on training, but placement and long-term retention. And so as a result of this 1,000 Strong campaign, we were able to successfully partner with the city. We are moving our first 200 workers in partnership with the city. I'm going to talk about one of those examples, which is the WED program, and how our in-house workforce development program, Ready to Work, how they mesh together to successfully implement the wins as a result of this 1,000 Strong campaign. And so the Workforce Equity Demonstration Project, just to give some more context about how we arrived here, the Black Worker Center, as I said, is member-led, and we birthed the Ready to Work program, which is a culturally competent workforce development program that fills the gap that some of the workforce centers can't meet. And so we were noticing that folks who had been through their traditional workforce models would come to our program and say, that process didn't work for me, or I was left out, or, you know, this challenge came up and there was no system in place to support my whole experience for me to successfully not just complete the training, but move in to an opportunity that I can realize and then be able to, you know, actualize and move through and see some benefit or change to my economic situation. And so Ready to Work was born out of a need from our members who said, you know, what is out there doesn't work for us. We need to create something different. So we created the Ready to Work program. And then as a result, as we were kind of searching, like, what are the industries that are most hospitable to Black workers in LA, we kept hearing the same challenges on the job, that folks would get an interview, seemed like it was promised, but it wouldn't go further. Or once they were on the job, they didn't stay very long because they felt like they were pushed out, or they felt like their employer or their team didn't know how to include them or accept them. They felt isolated. And so hearing about these challenges, it helped us to think about, okay, we need to craft really intentional partnerships with employers, with unions, with other community partners, so that the existing programming or new programming thinks about these challenges that we're hearing across the board. It wasn't specific to any industry. We were hearing from every industry we supported folks into the same types of challenges. So we knew that it was systematic and that it was something that needed to be dealt and addressed from many different approaches for us to, in fact, successfully create an experience that we wanted for our membership, but also for it to translate into community. And so the 1,000 Strong campaign was born out of those concerns. It has shown up in many iterations. We moved several different iterations of the campaign before we landed on the 1,000 Strong campaign. It was launched in 2020, and then we successfully onboarded our partner with the city in late 2021. And then we implemented the first ever boot camp in partnership with the city this past fall. And so just a little bit more about the workforce equity demonstration, so you too can learn about, you know, the potential for you to maybe replicate a similar demonstration project in your area. It is a pathway and formal partnership that connects the community agency with the unionized jobs, right? And so we prioritize high road career opportunities. And so our specific partner of interest was unionized city level jobs. And the WED program that I mentioned launched just this past fall, successfully was able to place 31 people into the program. And as a result, 24 people started in a career with the city this past January. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the program within the WED project that helps to train, but also place folks into these jobs that we have worked with the city to provide for community members. And so Ready to Work is a program that is reshaping traditional workforce development systems. And so in this program, it is crafted specifically to the demographic, to our community, to our membership. They're not only bought into the program because it is geared towards them, but they help to shape it, inform it, and write the curriculum that we have been using since 2018. And so it is a cohort model. Folks move through 4 to 6 weeks of a paid training opportunity. Folks receive that paid training, and also that's included as occupational training. They get to learn specifically industry-specific skill sets, and we're working in partnership with the city and unions, and so they're helping us to lift up that work. And so they're also working with us to train these participants over this period of time. And some of the focuses of Ready to Work are leadership development. We talk a lot about retention, having a personal retention approach and thinking about themselves as an investment. They leave with several certifications, and political education is a big one because we want folks to also understand the challenges that exist within our political landscape that create these landfalls or these challenges for the workers, and how there is not only a need for these intentional, programmatic solutions, but how policy is so important. And so while, we've had this success with one aspect of the 1,000 Strong campaign, we know it's so important that we continue to hold our partners accountable and pull other people into the fold so that the pathway can widen, because it's going to take so much creativity, so much intentionality, and rigorous policy so that this program doesn't die out in a couple years, but it becomes something that is sustained and adopted and multiplied across different industries and different industries and across the state and the county. So as I mentioned, there's occupational training that is offered through this project. And let me stop sharing for a minute because it moves. So there's occupational training, and I mentioned some about the political education piece. And so, ultimately what we want to do is make sure that folks are linked to a high road career opportunity that is unionized. And we want to continue to widen the pipeline through this specific program that we have under the 1,000 Strong campaign. But more so, we want to make sure that folks can emerge as leaders that are clear of their, role in the body politic, that they're clear in how they can continue to, offer peer-to-peer support to other folks who come through this program or other programs, or folks that they meet on the job. We want to make sure that folks are being, that the trainer, that folks are continually learning different strategies, not only to retain their job, but also to create a safe work environment. And we know that when workers are empowered and workers are informed, that makes a safer and better work environment, not just for themselves, but for other people. And it equips them with the wherewithal that they will come back and think critically about, okay, this is happening or that is happening. And that also helps us in-house to inform campaigns or to strengthen existing processes that we're moving. And to be able to speak very accurately to, okay, we started off saying that the priorities of the campaign was this and this, but we want to add to, and we want to bolster one aspect of that, because the members themselves, the community themselves who are living through the results of a successful campaign win can inform it, or can challenge it, or can, improve it. And so it's so important. I really want to highlight that, I think why the Black Workers Center is successful is because we have started with the members' needs, and we are also, continuing to make sure that it is at the center of everything that we do. I'm gonna pull my presentation back up and see if it'll continue. Just one thing.
Okay.
And so I think to close, I just want to highlight some of the strategies that I mentioned that the Black Worker Center focuses on when we are moving or planning or drafting policy. We start by making sure our membership is centered and involved. Our approach is bringing them to the table and making sure that they're included in the curation, they are in thought partnership with us. One way that we have managed some of the policy, the campaigns as we've drafted them or created strategies around them is by creating member-based action committees. And so, for example, we have a political education committee who meets regularly once a month that consists of members and one staff person, and they talk about, different priorities of the org that we want to maintain or update. We share information about where the campaign is. We discuss what are appropriate pivots, how do we acknowledge, the successes of the campaign, how do we continue to, strengthen, expand it. And so one way to bring membership into the political aspect of your organization, the planning or the implementation, is to make spaces where they can share, give feedback, but also are part of the planning. In addition to the action committee, we have a worker justice organizing committee, which is our member-based governance. And so before we make any decisions or make any changes to our campaigns or our programming, we present it to our worker justice organizing committee, and they vote on it and give feedback or ask questions or ask for more data. And that really is a really powerful way to make sure that we are not getting too far from the mission and vision. The purpose of our org is to, work alongside community members to improve the overall experience of Black workers in their experience at work. We are trying to empower. I would say empower is a sticky word, but we want to make sure that we are working alongside membership and community so that they not only have an opportunity to go to a good career opportunity, but they feel ownership there, they can stay there, other folks can follow after them. And over time, we want to see in partnership with the union, the employer in this respect, but also the member, that work environment improve for everyone. And we want to be able to measure it, and we want to be able to speak to, remember when we established this program as a result of that campaign, and now it's been 10 years, and it's just it's a set opportunity for Black workers. It's a set opportunity for workers who are at the margins and aren't considered in the same way or are repeatedly left out. And so that concludes my segment. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrea. We're going to ask all of the speakers to just turn on their cameras on. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. But first, just wanted to say thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. It's taken a lot of years to get to where your organization is now. And a lot of us other organizations have a lot to learn from you. So just appreciate you sharing your secret sauce. We have a couple of questions, and Deandra and Alexandra, if you can just join us with your camera on. I'll start with a question, Rudy, that you answered in the chat, but I think it's so important, so I'm going to read it out loud. Can you please talk about how teams can successfully set up policy, advocacy, and organizing teams? Sometimes folks confuse advocacy for organizing because they think issue advocacy is not part of policy advocacy.
You want to go ahead, Rudy?
I was hoping that you would go.
Oh, okay. I can start.
But I guess I'll just repeat what I wrote. Though. I think that this is a really sophisticated distinction that the anonymous attendee mentioned here about the difference between a policy advocacy and organizing. I think there are different skill sets. So remember what I was talking about, the superpowers. I think that you need policy advocates and practitioners that understand how legislation works. But another skill set is organizing. for building the capacity of leaders.
Mhm.
And the only thing that I offered there in the answer was that I think one way to begin to build those teams is to engage the people that are impacted. So in the LA Street Vendor Campaign, for example, street vendors were on our steering committee. In some of the photos that I shared with you, the vendors were there talking to us about the tactics and what would be helpful, because they're the ones that are impacted by the policies more than us. So they have to be the cornerstone of everything, you know. So that's like one way to begin.
Mhm.
What do you think, Alexandra?
Well, I wasn't sure I understood the question completely. So I'm just gonna offer like the definitions we have on these issues, and it's not about you have to have the same definitions as us, but just whatever your definitions are, be clear, and then that can lead to the answer to the question about the teams. For us, issue advocacy is important, but it is not the same thing as policy advocacy, because policy, to my mind, is about us changing a specific law, like passing a law or changing a law. And so it's not that one is better than the other, but simply policy is about a specific, like a law, like that's written down that you could point to. And then issue advocacy would be just talking to people about an issue more broadly. You have to do both, right? But they're not the same thing. And then and organizing is different. So for the kinds of leadership development that you can engage in through a policy advocacy campaign can certainly be also helpful for organizing, but in our context, it's not the same. So organizing is when, in our context, when workers come together to make changes, concrete changes in their workplace, right? Like change to their wage, change the whatever. And they accomplish that goal by, say, raising the minimum wage at a policy level, which we did back in 2015. It is a leadership development opportunity, and it can be very, very transformative, but it's not the same kind of transformation that comes when you actually confront the power dynamic in your own workplace. It's a different experience, and it's not to say that, you know, this one is good and that one is bad, but I don't think it's helpful to call all of it organizing or all of it advocacy. They're connected, but they're not the same.
Deandra, can you talk a little bit about recruitment and engagement of your members? How did you first begin to build and then sustain your members and anyone needing your services?
Yeah, and so we very intentionally sit down and make an organizing plan, and we think about where are the best locations and places to engage the folks that we want to connect with. And then we make sure we have the right team and they're well trained and have talking points and know how to connect with community, and make sure that folks are really listening to, you know, workers and community members' stories and getting a good sense of, you know, what are their interests, and you know, what do they already know? Like, they are already experts in their own experience. And so oftentimes it's just helping people to make connections between, you know, the priorities that maybe we're discussing in their own experiences. And I think strong organizing is relationship building, is figuring out, like, how do you maintain or first establish a connection with community, right? So as I said, like, figure out where you need to go, making sure people are well trained, and then making sure people know that relationship building is at the core of strong organizing. If no one will lead, if you can't lead anyone, if no one will follow you, your organizing team, it will be very difficult for you to build, you know, a committee, or for you to build a larger team, or you to build, you know, committee members who are tapped in, bought in to the mission, vision, or the focus of the work. And so I think it's really important that, you know, if you are embarking on establishing an organizing team, that you have a really strong very strong talking points, that you are clear about how you're going to engage folks. What platform do you have a social media plan? Are you on the ground? And then what is your follow-up plan, so that you make sure that the information that you departed, maybe if you met at a Ralph's or at a library, is crystallized for that person, and you can come full circle and continue to nurture that relationship, so that y'all can get to the space to work together, to find solutions, to talk about, you know, what are the policy focuses and how should they be shifted or, you know, amplified or what have you, right? And I think you have to start with good organizing before you get into political advocacy. It informs strong political advocacy. I think you can assess if you're going to win a campaign or if you're going to get close to it, if your organizing strategy is good off top.
Thank you. The next question, I think you all have touched on it a little bit, but if anybody would like to jump in to elaborate, can you discuss the process of finding pathways that take community concerns to legislation?
Well, not all community concerns have to go to legislation. There may be other ways to solve it that are not legislative. It's hard to pass do legislative campaigns, but if it turns out that the best solution is legislation, then yeah, there are pathways, and it starts with talking with community folks, starting to put together the coalition that Rudy was talking about, and because somebody has to actually write that legislation at some point. And if you are that person, great. And if you're not that person, you have to find someone who's going to actually be able to write that law. And of course, it is the legislators themselves that are responsible for it, but we often help them out by suggesting language that they could use, because we want it to be the right language, right? And of course, they have the right to push back because ultimately they're the author. But often it's very helpful if you know exactly what the language you want to be. And so you have to do all of that kind of, you know, I talked about the research that we did, the discussions we did, the conversations with all the workers and all of that, so that you get on the same page. What is it that we want to see? It's not an individual's wish, but you know, our entire coalitions or organizations or whatever. And then you figure out, okay, this is what we like to see. Then there's this process of, you know what, that is not gonna happen this year. It's just not a reality. And so then you might have to, you know, cut it back to something that is actually viable for this year. And that cutting back process happens all throughout the entire campaign, right? You might start with, you know, this list of 10 things you want in your new law. And then by the end of it, you have 2, and one of those 2 is, you know, not as strong as you wanted it. That often happens. So all along the way, there's a kind of constant conversation, negotiation, and discussion as you move through the process, and then keeping in mind what the long-term goal is. I mentioned earlier that the campaign we're doing this year with SB 497 that just got off the Senate floor and now is going to the Assembly, it's just one step. We don't think it's going to answer all our problems. We have a longer-term goal that we think will be really game-changing, but we knew we couldn't pass that this year. So we're taking it step by step. So yeah, just keep in mind the role that a particular policy campaign can play in a longer-term goal of power building or systems change.
Rudy, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I just want to note that systems change sometimes does require laws, sometimes it doesn't. And I think I just want to underline that. How to find pathways for community concerns. I'll give you an example, and shout out to some of the people here from CARE and from Chitla and some of our partners in the Immigrants Are LA campaign. We were hearing from people that they weren't getting access to county resources. And we did a survey to really learn what they were experiencing. And so with that data set, we did a lot of research about how can we make sure that county resources are going to immigrant communities. This is the problem. And then we began to identify, well, does that require some kind of a legislative move? Or does that require basically an administrative decision, and who has control over that? And so that after you identify the problem that your community gives you the concern and their issue, then there's like a whole section where you have to do research together to identify what is the lever you're going to pull to solve that. Sometimes it's an administrative decision and maybe someone just has to say yes or no to that thing. Sometimes it's like, wow, you really need a law to change that. In Immigrants RLA's case, we got to a place where we realized that we were not getting the right data from the county on how money was being spent. And so to get that data, we needed the Board of Supervisors to introduce a motion to ask the departments to do that. And so that was the lever that we had to pull. And so then it goes into everything that Alexandra just mentioned of like moving relationships and talking to educating the offices and persuading them to do it. You know, the community concerns were the thread that connected all of it. And their voices were the ones that were leading that charge.
Thank you. I'm going to take us to our last question, and then anybody can feel free to jump in and answer it. How do you ensure the communities you serve are actively involved in a campaign with various components like organizing, communications, advocacy?
Well, I'll start off and then I'm sure the others will have more to add. One thing that organizers find very annoying is when they get a call from a policy advocate that says, we need 50 or 5 bodies Tuesday, and today's Monday or Friday. And we need them to be, you know, they don't say bodies, but that's basically what it feels like. And we need them to be here at this time in this place, and we can provide lunch, and that is very annoying. Of course, we know that at the moment of mobilization, we need to have people there, but nobody really wants to be just pulled in at the very last minute and said that and told that they're just needed for one particular action. Sometimes you can't help having to do that, but we want to minimize that as much as possible. Our community members can be involved at every level, but it takes time and it takes really intentional planning and integration. And another thing that I'd say just in general is that often community members are pulled in to quote unquote tell their story. Now, of course, that's important because our community members who are impacted or workers who are impacted by the issue do have to tell their story so that people can actually understand and put a human face to a problem or to a set of statistics. So telling stories is not a bad thing, but that is not the only thing that workers can do, because worker leaders are also fighting on the ground to create change in their workplaces. They are also informing the campaign strategy. They're also serving as media spokespeople, and all of those things are and should be part of a campaign. But in order for that to happen in an authentic way, you have to put into the time and the relationship building and the training for all of that. And it also isn't, it's not helpful sometimes to just pull in a worker at the last minute and say, oh, this worker said this, and so therefore, you know, it has to be a process, just like anyone needs a process to learn a new system or a new campaign or whatever. We have to build that in a very intentional way.
Thank you, Alexandra. It seems like the next nuts and bolts training has to be on building a base, because that really is the heart and core of all of this. Rudy, we have a question for you. Would you mind sharing a bit more details about your experience seeking better information through local representatives? Did you say that was with the county commission? Would love to learn more from your experience.
I didn't say county. I think I said the board of the supervisors, but how to find information, I think that I think this is more on the policy advocate side, I guess, but it's both. But you know, I think it's really important if, let's say that you identify a problem in your coalition, like we want to, you know, I don't know, pick a problem. We're gonna house everybody in LA, and that's a problem in your community. And you have a coalition that's really committed to that. One of the next steps is to do a power map, an analysis of who are the decision makers in your community and who has power to move that issue, right? And when you do the power map, you're going to identify like your elected officials, of course, right? Those are like the names that we see in the news and in the paper. But then you begin to identify the people that work for them. Then you begin to identify the other commissions, maybe perhaps the volunteer commissions, the citizen commissions that are involved. And then that's how you begin to find your information, is it literally by sending emails or making phone calls and saying, hey, Diana, I see that you serve on this commission or that you work for Supervisor Solis. I'd love to sit down with you to learn. We're worried about this housing issue and we have these questions. And then that's how you begin to piece together the answers to your questions. It's a lot of research. It's just like research and on the internet, but also in person. And then once you start assembling that research, it becomes easier to navigate through government to find the answers for other things.
Thank you. So I want to thank the participants again, the panelists. It's just such privilege to hear you all speak and share all this with us. Before we close out, we want to do another poll. So we have 2 more questions for you and then a few announcements. So Aurora, we can get those started. The first question is, does your organization run grassroots advocacy campaigns? And the second question is, how comfortable do you feel leading and or participating in a grassroots advocacy campaign? So last time we got to 90% participation. I think we can get there again.
I hope everybody votes very comfortable in number 2. At least moderately comfortable, friends.
Yeah. Okay, we are at 60%. So we'll wait a little longer. We're at 70%. Okay. So most people on the call, 82% do already run or work for an organization that runs grassroots and advocacy campaigns. That is great. 12% are not sure if they do. For the second question, most people feel very comfortable running, leading, or participating in a grassroots advocacy campaign. 39% moderately, and 12% would like to continue and have more trainings on this subject matter. And again, we are asking for all of this information to really help us understand who's joining these calls, what else can we bring to you all, what other organizations do you want to learn from, do you want to be in a space with? Rudy, I don't know, was that a raised hand? No, okay. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you, all of you, for joining us. We will send a follow-up email with this recording and some resources that will be available to all of you. Our next session is September 7th. So please save the date and more information to come. If there is a specific subject or issue, topic you want us to bring, please reach out to us, let us know. And with that, I will close out, and I hope you all have a really good day. Bye, everyone.